So we've been talking about a lot about the Springboks failings over the last week and the shock loss to the Wallabies at Ellis Park. Having been there at Ellis Park, it was, I think the whole crowd was stunned. It was only the Aussie players that were really celebrating. So not something you see often at Ellis Park. So I thought, why not let's get a perspective of how it's gone down in Australia. Obviously, one of their biggest wins ever, and probably one of the biggest under Joe Schmidt anyway. But I'm happy to invite to welcome Christy Doran. Christy, did I pronounce your name right at least?
Yeah, bang on the money, Brendan. Good to
Uh,
chat. Great to join you.
no, thanks, mate. And you work for the Raw in Australia, so you can go check out Christy's articles there. Let's start with that. How stunned were you? Because I think there was probably not a lot of belief in either countries that the Wallabies could probably win that one.
You're not wrong. It was disbelief, but at the same time, it's 3 a.m. in the morning when this is all unfolding, and yeah, the vast majority of Australians are asleep. And I had several people that I spoke to the next day, agents of players, family members who had turned the TV off at halftime because they thought it was going to be so one-sided still in the second half. 22-5, of course, at halftime after being 22-0 down after 18 minutes. So you would know as a journalist with the 60-minute mark, you're very much looking at how you're going to craft this story. And I just had to put the laptop away for 5 minutes just to take a breath to think, wow, what's unfolding here? And then you see Max Jorgensen go down the right-hand touchline. And look, I thought it was done and dusted at that point in time. And I thought the Wallabies got too much momentum. They're finishing over the top here. And it was an extraordinary finish, which continues a remarkable turnaround under Joe Schmidt.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all watched we were quite complimentary to the Wallabies in the Lion series because I almost felt that if they had a better first half in Brisbane, that series may have been very different if Will Skelton maybe played in that game as well, one or two other players. But I think from a South African point of view, and some people may say it's a bit of arrogance from our side, but when you're number one in the world and you see that, you expect the Wallabies to give you a fight, but all the factors in your favor, the altitude, Ellis Park, the history of the Wallabies not having won there for 62 years, not having won in since, geez, when it was about 20 years ago in Bloemfontein with the Kurtley, that Kurtley Beale penalty there in Bloemfontein. So I suppose in a way, it's not wrong to expect the Springboks to win, but I mean that must be really greeted. That win must be greeted as a huge step forward for Wallaby rugby, especially considering where you guys were probably a year or two ago.
Yeah, to paint the picture of where Australian rugby is at, like this time last year, the Springboks come to Australia and they win 2-0. The Rugby Championship is, done and dusted right from the outset. They got, the Wallabies got hammered in Brisbane, got hammered in Perth. They go to South Africa as $10 outsiders to win that match. And you've just pointed out the history that the Wallabies are staring the face into. So, look, no one thought that the Wallabies were a chance here. Like, in fact, they were paying $101 to win by more than 15 points, and we know that they won by 16. So the bookies got it completely wrong, as did everyone, except for the Wallabies. They had a fair bit of belief that they had picked up over the last month, and I felt they missed a trick against the Lions. I didn't think it was a very good Lions team. They got progressively worse as the series went on, and I came under a bit of heat from people inside and certainly the public for describing it as a sleepy Joe preparation. I thought the Wallabies preparation was poor and they were blown out of the blocks, but they have battled hardened in South Africa, aren't they? And we saw that they finished right over the top of the Springboks. So what it's done here in Australia is it's been on the front and back pages of newspapers where the Wallabies haven't been since the Eddie Jones fiasco of 2023, the sorry World Cup campaign there. But in addition, you've got the 7:30 report, which is the flagship ABC news program here on a Monday that is finishing their program by speaking about the Wallabies. So 2 years out from a World Cup, there's suddenly a massive amount of oxygen around this Wallabies revival under Joe Schmidt. So you can't downplay how significant that result was from a Wallabies perspective.
I suppose then the obvious question that comes next is Joe's leaving in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. and Les Kiss has taken over. We obviously know Les from his time here with the Springboks 20 odd years ago, and he's obviously improved a lot as a coach since then as well. But is there a fear that maybe when Joe goes, that maybe that sort of everything you've built up might take a step backwards?
Yeah, it's the million-dollar question, and it's the great kind of cloud hanging over Australian rugby at the moment. Because when the Wallabies win, Australian rugby's healthy, and when they lose, it's not. And at the moment, Joe Schmidt's he's almost had his fingers around Rugby Australia. He's in control here. So I say that because he signed on until the end of the Lion series, and then at the start of the year in February, he decided I'm going to extend through to the end of the Rugby Championship, being in October. And then only back in April, he decided, okay, Les Kiss is your preferred man. You can't get him until midway through 2026. I'll stay on until mid 2026. So he doesn't even hand over the coaching reins until after the Nations Cup matches, in July 2026. So the coaching transition and changeover, the Wallabies and Rugby Australia are describing it as seamless, and they're hoping that it's the first time that they're doing this on their own accord without sacking someone. But then again, you scratch your head and you go, you've got 12 months now with a new coach, new coaching structure, definitely got different ideas around players and style, and also a pretty unproven international coach. This isn't a guy that Joe Schmidt's been to two World Cups as a head coach and an assistant with the All Blacks. This is a guy that's been as an assistant with the Irish on two occasions in 2011 and 2015. So there is a lot of question marks as to, is Les Kiss the right guy? He's got no silverware to speak of as a head coach, and that's the great concern when you're passing over these reins. And I would think that Rugby Australia are hopeful that in some capacity Joe Schmidt stays on in a consultant or whatever it might be, a director of rugby, but there's still probably another chapter or two to be written in this story.
Yeah, I think there's still. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we've seen how a coach like Rassie can turn things around in 18 months, but 12 months before a World Cup, and with so much riding on that World Cup for Australian rugby, is a difficult one. Just turning to Cape Town now, because I suppose that's the other million-dollar question: is can they back it up? Because wounded Springbok, as we've all seen over the years, is quite a dangerous thing, and there's almost an expectant sort of thing around here about they're waiting for the backlash, as they call it. The backlash to get from last week. Just the thoughts from there. Do you think the Wallabies can back it up?
Oh, they've proven the Australian public and many other people close to the game wrong over the last month, haven't they? They've progressively got better over the last four test matches. So I think you'd be silly to write them off. It's going to be very difficult again. This is a 30-year. The last time the Wallabies won in Cape Town was back in 1992. So it's another kind of drought-breaking hoodoo that they've got to snap. I do subscribe to this idea that there is going to be a backlash. Like, let's be honest, a week ago, they had 13 entries to six. They just couldn't finish the Wallabies off. And that was great scramble defence. It showed their maturity, their ability to get on the ball through Tom Hooper and Fraser McWright. But if some of those push passes don't, go to the ground, or if they just recycle, if the line out transition is better, it's probably a different story. And so I don't think the box, they were definitely underwhelming, disappointing, inaccurate. In Rassie Erasmus's words, dog shit. But they're not a dog shit team, are they? And so I think everyone respects that they'll be able to, return serve. The question I've got is, you've just made 10 changes. Can an Andre Pollard immediately come in and it all click? Because it's been a little while since he's played, and there's some new combinations, obviously, like they've been there for years and years, but it doesn't always happen like clockwork when you're facing pressure that you haven't faced in a little while. So I think this Wallabies team is a pretty good one. Once again, I think you'll target Tom Robertson in the scrum, and that's one area I expect the Springboks to really target the Wallabies here, is go after the scrum and don't just allow like a Ben O'Keefe from last week and now James Dolman to allow the ball to be played at the back of the scrum when it goes down. There'll be a lot of pressure from that box front eight.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, I think to me this is a very important game because for the box from the box side, because if they lose here, then it's not just one slip. It's there's certainly cracks that are starting to show, and I think that's the one thing Rusty's got away with. He's been able to rotate so many times and get away with it. I mean, last year when he went to Australia, he played virtually a second squad in the first game and basically got away with a good victory there. So there's certainly a bit of pressure on the box, and they're going to probably go back to type. We expect with the team that they've picked, we're not going to expect them to run everything like they did last week, and the weather's probably not going to allow it because it's been raining in Cape Town the whole week as well. So it's going to be a very interesting strategic game. But I think Rob Valetini coming back into the team makes the Wallabies a lot stronger. I'm very interested to see Corey Toole in the 15s game. I haven't seen much of him at Super Rugby, but I've seen him in sevens a lot, and he's certainly got pace. There are some concerns about his defense, though, if I'm right.
His defense has improved, and I'd say it's improved out of sight. He's gone from a tackle percentage of 64 last year to 68, and I know those numbers aren't that different, but he's made double the amount of tackles this year. So he's going much higher into contact, but also the way that the Brumbies use him is often as a bit of a shooter too. So, sometimes you do see him fall off tackles. The Hurricanes exposed him and Ryan Lonergan back in Super Rugby a few months ago, and that came off the back of a couple of giants running over the top of them. So I expect a bit of traffic to go down that way. They'll test him in the air. He's improved in the air, but he's nowhere near as consistent as a Kurtley Arenstar or a Cheslin Colby in terms of ensuring that they win possessions. So there's a couple of areas that the Springboks, I think, will certainly target the Wallabies. Clearly, four locks, don't they have? They've got the bomb squad back. It's a 6-2 split. You're right, Rob Valetini will add a lot. And in many ways, I think this is actually the best back row right now. Tom Hooper, Fraser McWright, and Rob Valetini. It's very well balanced. It's got still Will Skelton and Nick Frost. So I love the makeup of this pack. But Tom Robinson's still unproven. He's back at his preferred position at loose head prop, not tight head. But how are these two 35-year-olds going to go once again? They were up to it, the challenge last week, but Nick White and James O'Connor, you've got to remember this is only his second test JOC in the last 3 years. And yes, he came up trumps last week, but I imagine he'll be tested in so many different ways this week. And we know the international game, it's such fine margins. So if the Springboks, their discipline is better, I expect them to be able to run away with it and put much more pressure on in the contact zone. That's the one area they've really got to fix. 10 penalties to 4. I know that there's advantages that are played and the box scored off the back, but they allowed the Wallabies to get back into the game last week through their poor inaccuracy and discipline there.
Yeah, I think that's the big from the box point of view. There's a big question mark about are they going to be as loose again? We don't expect them to, but even if they go back, because they've been committing to this expansive style under Tony Brown, yeah, you're right. I mean, they haven't played many people, many good teams this year. And no disrespect to Italy and Georgia, but they're not in the same league as the Rugby Championship. And so there are question marks on both sides, and it's interesting because I think the Bok pack is probably this week a bit weaker without Sia and especially without Peter Steph du Toit. When you've got two young locks, well, I say young locks, RG's still Arceus name on his. He's not young anymore, but he certainly hasn't started many tests for the Boks. He's normally on the bench. So there's a big emphasis on that bomb squad coming this week and to finish off the game with Eben and Luet and those type of guys there. Just your thoughts on the bomb squad. Do you think that's going to be the difference at the end of the day?
I think it absolutely will be. And you throw in the big body of Damien Diolande and there's giants across this entire field. I agree. I think it's the second half where the Springboks skip ahead of the Wallabies. So even if it's tight at half time, I think, yeah, they will be the difference. It's been the difference for the last few years, hasn't it? But Rassie has this unique ability to be able to inspire, to get a reaction out of the side. And I expect that you'll see a fair bit of that. But this Wallabies team's got belief and they've got finishers. This back three that they've got is lethal now. Max Jorgensen is going to be a world-class player into the future. He's already shown glimpses of that over the last 12 to 18 months. The midfield is still an area which is suspect for the Wallabies. Lenny Katowi's really a 13 playing at 12, and Joseph Kusaswali played a lot at fullback this year, and even last week defensively, he shot up a couple of times, got beaten. It's an area he struggled at during the Lions series as well. So there's definitely areas at the Springboks when they show that expansive game, if they can get on the outside, I think they'll be really, really hard to stop.
Yeah, it's an intriguing game. I must admit, I'm looking forward to this. It's nice when there's something to talk about in these games as well, because a lot of the times they are a bit of a foregone conclusion as well. So it's always good when there's a bit of, especially now, just looking a bit further ahead to the rest of the Rugby Championship, because obviously this weekend's games takes all our focus. But you guys got the Pumas next, and they were a bit disappointing last week against the All Blacks, I must admit. But they are a bit of a dark horse. And last year, I mean, they had that one game that they really thumped the Wallabies just out of nowhere. Um, just your thoughts on those games, because they're coming obviously to Australia then next.
Yeah, well, Brendan, you're right. It's the most intriguing rugby championship we've had in at least a decade. And surprise, surprise, it's probably because the Wallabies are finally pulling their finger out, isn't it? And, the Box and the All Blacks have been carrying this tournament. And then as a result, the tournament's lost some of its prestige. I will say, though, that three of the four semi-finalists from the World Cup in 2023, Southern Hemisphere sides, it undoubtedly produces the best teams, the best athletes, and the best performances come at the World Cup. Argentina's going to be a testy proposition for the Wallabies. They're like Australia, they're inconsistent, and they've got some game breakers, don't they? But both sides haven't been able to have the games where they're threes or eights on whatever given day, and you don't know which team will turn up. So Argentina could well bounce back against the All Blacks this weekend. I'd expect that they would be better. But then again, this All Blacks team's good, isn't it? Will Jordan is just one of the game's best players at the moment. Wallace Atiti's coming back via the bench. So that's an intriguing contest. But the other aspect to Argentina coming to Australia is that there's now an expectation on the Wallabies to win. They've just taken down the back-to-back world champs. They beat the Lions in Sydney. For the first time in a long time, there'll be a little bit of expectation around this Wallabies team. And then you throw in the fact that the World Cup draw is done right at the end of the year as well, off the back of the final game. So ranking points, status points are huge, and the Wallabies desperately want a top six position so that they can get a seeding for the World Cup, which is obviously being played in our backyard here in Australia in 2027.
I saw an interesting thing on Twitter the other day, that if the Wallabies win by 16 again, then they jump to third on the world rankings, and the Box drop to sixth. That's probably unlikely if anyway, because Cape Town doesn't really produce big score lines. It's normally a grind down there on that wet pitch. But yeah, it's a fascinating way of how quickly the world rankings can change. And I think that's the danger for both sides as well. Sorry, just got a call coming in. Let me just turn it off. Sorry. I'll edit that out.
Oh,
No
good.
worries. Yeah, and I think just the last thing I want to ask you really is just for a prediction for this weekend, and you can put your Wallaby hat on and go for it if you want.
Well, those that listen to me and know my work will say that I'm a bit too negative and downbeat and pessimistic. Maybe that's because the Wallabies have won at 40% since 2015. So, you see some expectation. You want to jump on this bandwagon. I think there's an element of skepticism that's still hovering over my head at the moment. I think the Box will bounce back, but I think it'll be another tight game. I think it'll come down to that last 15 minutes. So I would say that the Box will win a 28-15 scoreline. But the Wallabies have shown that they can finish tries, and they haven't been able to do that for quite a while. And some of these game breakers, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. So either way, it's compelling viewing, and it's really pleasing to be able to talk positively about what the Rugby Championship is at the moment. What do you
Yeah, I
think,
can
Brendan?
imagine. I think the Box will probably win as well. I'm a bit worried. I tend to be very try to be level-headed. I don't get carried away with these things, but I do see the dangers. I do think though Russie and them are experienced enough, and there's enough experience in that team that they should know how to win a game like this. So. My one concern is that we're going through this phase where we've got double World Cup winners are getting into their 30s, and some of them are falling off the pace a bit, and that might continue. And you see the difference between that and a Max Jorgensen when he gets the ball, and some of these guys. And I think that's the big worry from a Springbok perspective, is that the new generation, which there's a lot of talent coming through, is maybe not getting there fast enough, and the old ones probably regressing a little bit quicker than we expected. So I think that's the danger of the Box, but I think they should still win it. I think the weather's probably going to play a lot into this one, and if it's going to be a grind, I expect the Box will enjoy that probably more than the Wallabies. So
Yeah.
and I think,
Yeah.
oops,
I think I think you're right. If I would say anything, it's that I think it's timed perfectly. You're midway through the World Cup cycle at the moment. There's still 2026 before you've really got to iron out in 27. I think it's timed really well now to work out who will make it through to that 27 World Cup. But you still want to have those couple of guys that have got that experience of the Willie LaRue's, who of course has pulled out late with the injury, but Fussie's a great player to come in. But I think the Box are primed to go again. I think they're still the World Cup favourites come 2027.
well, I obviously hope you're right, but it's going to be a very interesting game. And yeah, if you're wrong again and the Wallabies do win, I'm going to have to get you back next week to crow a bit about them, so and get and enjoy it a bit more. But Christy, thanks, man, and thanks for the time, man. And enjoy the game. I know it's early morning by you guys. I hope you don't lose too much sleep, and I hope it's worthwhile getting up for.
Plenty of black coffee. Cheers, Brendan.
Cheers, man. Thanks.